The rain poured mercilessly from the dark sky, drenching Amina's trembling body as she stood barefoot on the cold, wet pavement. Her arms wrapped tightly around her swollen belly, her breath coming out in short, painful gasps. The icy wind cut through the thin fabric of her dress, sending violent shivers down her spine. She had nothing, no coat, no shoes, no home. Only the growing life inside her kept her standing. Behind her, the large wooden door of her former home remained shut, as if sealing away every memory she had built within those walls. Just moments ago, her husband, Karim, had thrown her out like she was nothing more than garbage. His words still rang in her ears, laced with cruelty. "Get out! You and that child mean nothing to me." She had begged, pleaded with him, her hands clutching his shirt as she sobbed. But he had shoved her away with such force that she had stumbled onto the cold stone steps, the sharp impact sending a jolt of pain through her already aching body. She had barely managed to steady herself before the door slammed shut behind her, the sound echoing in the empty streets. Amina turned her gaze to the dimly lit windows of the surrounding houses. The neighbors had heard everything. She could see the flickers of movement behind the curtains, the faint shadows of people peeking through. But no one came outside. No one opened their door. She was alone. Karim was a man of influence, his wealth and status casting a long shadow over the neighborhood. No one would dare cross him, not even to help a woman left helpless in the storm. Her breath hitched as she looked down at her belly, gently caressing it despite the numbness in her fingers. She whispered softly, her voice breaking under the weight of her despair. "We will survive this. I promise." Tears mixed with raindrops as they ran down her cheeks. But the pain in her heart was worse than the cold seeping into her bones. She had loved Karim. She had given him everything, stood by him, believed in him. And in return, he had tossed her away like she was nothing. Amina swallowed the lump in her throat, wiping her face with shaky hands. This was not the end. It couldn't be. She had no one, nowhere to go, but she would not let this be the end of her story. With one last glance at the home that was no longer hers, she turned away, her bare feet stepping into the dark unknown. Amina had always believed in love, the kind that could weather any storm, the kind that could soften even the hardest of hearts. That belief had been her greatest strength, and her deepest flaw. She had married Karim against her family's warnings, brushing off their concerns as nothing more than unfounded fears. "You don't know him the way I do," she had told them. "He loves me." And in the beginning, it had felt true. Karim had been charming, the kind of man who could make the world disappear with just a smile. He spoke sweet words, showered her with affection, and made her feel like the luckiest woman alive. She had been so sure, so utterly convinced, that she had found the man of her dreams. But dreams have a way of turning into nightmares. It started subtly. A cold tone here, an impatient sigh there. The warmth in his eyes slowly faded, replaced by something distant, something calculating. The loving husband she had known began to slip away, revealing a man she no longer recognized. His words became sharper, cutting her down in ways that left wounds deeper than any blade. "You're useless, Amina. Always clinging, always needy." Then came the distance. He stopped coming home on time, stopped touching her the way he used to, stopped looking at her with anything other than indifference. By the time she realized what was happening, she was already trapped in a marriage built on a love that no longer existed. When she found out she was pregnant, she thought, hoped, that maybe, just maybe, things would change. That he would soften at the thought of a child. That the love he once had for her would return. She had never been more wrong. Karim was furious. He never wanted a child. He saw it as a burden, an inconvenience. His words became crueler, his anger more volatile. "You think this is a blessing? This is your problem, not mine." Amina endured it all, clinging to the love she had once known, convincing herself that deep down, the man she had married was still there. That he would change. That he would come back to her. But love doesn't change a man who never wanted to love in the first place. Amina had spent countless nights crying herself to sleep, but nothing could have prepared her for this night. The moment Karim walked through the door with another woman on his arm, Amina's stomach twisted with dread. The woman was draped in expensive silk, her laughter ringing through the house like a cruel melody. Amina's heart pounded, her pregnant belly tightening as she struggled to make sense of what was happening. Karim barely spared her a glance before dropping his keys on the table. "Pack your things," he said coldly. "You're leaving." Her breath caught. What? The woman beside him smirked, draping herself over Kareem like she already owned him. Amina shook her head in disbelief. Kareem, I'm your wife, she whispered, stepping forward, pleading. I'm carrying your child. For a brief moment, she searched his face, desperate for any sign of the man she had once loved. But all she saw was boredom, irritation, even. Kareem let out a dry, mocking laugh. That child? He waved dismissively. It means nothing to me. His words hit her like a slap. Her knees wobbled, but she stood her ground. You can't do this to me. Please, Kareem. We made vows. I have nowhere to go. He scoffed, stepping forward until he loomed over her. Not my problem. Before she could say another word, his fingers dug into her arm. Amina gasped as he dragged her toward the door. She struggled, but he was stronger, his grip merciless. Kareem, please, she cried, panic setting in. But he didn't listen. He wrenched open the door and shoved her out. The cold air hit her like a slap. Rain poured from the dark sky, drenching her within seconds. She turned back, hoping, praying, that he would come to his senses. But all he did was sneer before slamming the door shut. The sound echoed through the empty streets, sealing her fate. Amina stood there, shaking, her heart splintering into a million pieces. This isn't real. This has to be a nightmare. But it wasn't. She was homeless. Pregnant. Alone. Amina trudged through the rain-soaked streets, her body trembling with exhaustion and cold. Every step felt heavier than the last, her soaked dress clinging to her as the weight of her unborn child pulled at her aching frame. She wrapped her arms around her belly protectively, whispering soft reassurances to the life growing inside her. I won't let anything happen to you. The city was cruel at night. People walked past her, sparing nothing more than a glance before hurrying away, as if her misfortune was contagious. Her legs wobbled beneath her, and after hours of wandering aimlessly, she finally collapsed near an old, crumbling shelter on the edge of the market district. Darkness threatened to consume her, but just before she lost consciousness, a pair of warm, calloused hands touched her shoulder. Child, a voice rasped. You're safe now. Amina blinked up at the kind, wrinkled face of an old woman wrapped in layers of faded fabric. She smelled of herbs and firewood, her eyes filled with a wisdom that soothed Amina's frayed nerves. The woman, Mama Fatima, lifted her effortlessly, despite her frail frame, and carried her into the warmth of the shelter. Amina's body melted into the warm blankets, her shaking hands clutching the cup of steaming broth Mama Fatima pressed into her grip. I know that look, the old woman murmured, settling beside her. I once had it too. Amina turned to her, confused. Abandoned, Mama Fatima said simply. Left with nothing but my own strength. Tears burned in Amina's eyes. How did you survive? Mama Fatima's lips curled into a knowing smile. By realizing I had to. You must too, my child. Amina looked down at her belly, the weight of her unborn child grounding her. She had spent so long believing she was weak, clinging to love that was never real. But now, she understood. She had no choice but to rise. The next morning, Amina woke up with a new fire in her heart. She asked Mama Fatima for work, any work. She scrubbed floors, washed clothes, and learned how to sew. Every coin she earned, she saved. She would rebuild. She would survive. And one day, Kareem would regret ever throwing her away. Amina worked tirelessly, pouring every ounce of her strength into rebuilding her life. Days turned into weeks, then months. She took whatever jobs she could, scrubbing floors, washing clothes, and even selling small handmade crafts in the market. Mama Fatima guided her, teaching her the art of trade and survival. With every coin she earned, she saved. She never wasted a single cent, knowing that each step forward was a step closer to securing a future for her child. And when her son, Idris, was born, she held him in her arms, promising him a life far greater than the one she had been forced into. Time passed, and Amina's small craftwork began to gain recognition. She had a natural talent for design, and soon, wealthy women from the city sought her out for custom embroidery and fine fabrics. What started as a small market stall grew into a shop of her own. Years later, Amina stood as a successful businesswoman, running a well-established textile business. Her fabrics were known for their beauty, and people traveled from far and wide to purchase them. She no longer worried about survival, she had built an empire from the ashes of her suffering. Idris, now a bright and strong young boy, watched his mother with admiration. He knew of her struggles, of the nights she went hungry so he could eat, of the tears she hid from him. But he also saw her strength, her determination, and he carried that fire within himself. While Amina thrived, Kareem's life took a different path. His new wife, the woman he had thrown Amina away for, turned out to be disloyal. She took everything, his money, his house, and even his dignity. She vanished without a trace, leaving him with nothing but debts and regrets. His business, once thriving, crumbled under mismanagement and arrogance. His power and influence faded, and soon, he found himself struggling to make ends meet. No longer the proud, wealthy man he once was, Kareem wandered the very streets he had thrown Amina onto years ago, only now, he was the one seeking shelter, food, and mercy. And as fate would have it, his downfall was far from over. Kareem dragged his weary body through the marketplace, his once proud stature reduced to that of a beggar. His clothes were worn, his face gaunt with hunger. He had knocked on countless doors, searching for work, for mercy, but no one wanted anything to do with him. Then, he heard whispers of a successful business, a textile empire owned by a woman known for her resilience and generosity. If he could just get a job there, he thought, maybe he could start over. With desperation in his eyes, he walked into the grand shop. The scent of fine fabrics and wealth filled the air. Women from high society browsed the exquisite designs, and workers bustled around, treating their employer with the utmost respect. Kareem approached the front desk, clearing his throat. "Please. I need work. I can do anything. I used to run a business before, but I lost everything." Amina turned slowly, her expression unreadable as she looked at the man who had once cast her aside like trash. Kareem didn't recognize her at first, her elegant attire, her confidence, her success, it was too far from the broken woman he had thrown onto the streets. She studied him for a moment before speaking. "What exactly are you capable of, sir?" Her voice was steady, measured. Kareem straightened slightly, eager to prove himself. "I was a businessman. I know how to manage, how to lead." Amina let out a small laugh, cold and sharp. "Manage? Lead? Tell me, Kareem, where did all that skill go when you lost everything?" His breath caught in his throat. He stared at her, confused, until realization struck him like lightning. His eyes widened in shock, his face draining of color. "Amina," he whispered, stepping back as if struck. "Yes," she said, tilting her head. "The woman you threw away. The woman you left to die in the streets. The woman you thought would never rise again." Kareem's legs trembled beneath him. He wanted to speak, to beg, to explain, but what could he say? Nothing could erase what he had done. And yet, his humiliation was far from over. Kareem's knees hit the cold marble floor as he looked up at Amina with desperation. His hands trembled as he clasped them together, his pride shattered beyond repair. "Amina, please. I was a fool. I was blind. I let my arrogance destroy everything. Have mercy," he pleaded, his voice cracking under the weight of his downfall. Amina stood tall, unmoved by his display. The same man who had once laughed in her face as he threw her onto the streets now cowered before her. The irony was bitterly satisfying. She took a slow step forward, her heels clicking against the polished floor. "Mercy?" she repeated, as if testing the word. Her gaze was sharp, piercing through him like a dagger. Kareem nodded frantically, his lips trembling. "Yes, I lost everything. My business failed, my second wife left me, and I have nothing. You're my only hope." Amina crossed her arms. "Hope?" She scoffed. "Did you give me hope when you tossed me out in the cold? Did you think about the child growing inside me when you locked the doors behind me?" Kareem's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. She leaned in slightly, her expression unreadable. "You threw me away like I was nothing. Now, you are nothing." Kareem flinched at the words. His body sagged, defeated. Amina exhaled slowly. For years, she had carried the pain of that night, the betrayal, the humiliation. Now, standing before the man who had broken her, she realized something: she no longer needed revenge. She had already won. She straightened, her voice calm but firm. I built this empire with my own hands. I struggled, I suffered, but I survived. You took the easy path, thinking power would protect you forever. Kareem sobbed, pressing his forehead to the floor. Please, I'll do anything. Just give me a chance. Amina turned away, walking toward the door. I don't waste chances on men like you, she said over her shoulder. As she stepped out, the doors shut behind her with a finality that left Kareem in utter silence, drowning in the consequences of his own choices. Amina stepped out into the sunlight, the warmth of her child's small hand wrapped securely in hers. The weight of the past no longer burdened her, it had shaped her, but it did not define her. As they walked away, her child looked up, curiosity flickering in their innocent eyes. Mama, will we ever see him again? Amina didn't stop, didn't look back. She squeezed her child's hand gently, a soft but firm smile on her lips. We don't look back at the past, my love. We only move forward. Behind them, Kareem stood frozen at the doorway, watching as the two figures disappeared into the bustling world beyond. His throat tightened, his heart heavy with regret. The power, the arrogance, the cruel choices, none of it mattered anymore. He had thrown away his family, and now, he had to live with the emptiness. Amina, on the other hand, had everything she needed. Her strength. Her success. And most importantly, her child, her true victory. As the camera slowly faded, the contrast was clear. One walked toward a future full of hope, while the other was left behind in the ruins of his past.